Centuries ago, the Danes decided that they were going to invade Scotland. Now, the Danes were pretty clever people, and they decided after some consulting with the generals and figuring out how they were going to attack the Danes or the Scots, how they were going to do that. And they decided that the best way to attack Scotland was during the middle of the night because they wouldn't be expecting it. So, in order to approach the Scottish army in silence, they decided to remove their shoes as they crept up towards the Scots. And so, if you've ever been to Scotland or even seen the symbol for Scotland, there's this little thing called a cotton thistle. And in the center of it is a purple cotton like substance, but around the edge of it are needles that stick out in various different directions. And as they were creeping towards the army of the Scots, one of the soldiers stepped on the thistle, and needless to say, he had a few loud words to say. And as he did that, it woke the entire Scottish army, who grabbed their swords and their spears and whatever they had to fight the Danes with, and the Danes were unable to capture Scotland. One could say that they came into a foot of victory, within a foot of victory, but 1 foot led to their defeat. I had to dig for that one. Our feet determine where we stand, or fall may be more something to say. Verbally, when we want somebody to become independent, we tell them to stand on your own 2 feet. Or we might tell them to get both feet back on the ground. You're up in the clouds. A shaky argument might take a person where he doesn't have a foot to stand on. Or if we're encouraging someone, we might say, put your best foot forward. What are some of the other colloquialisms that we use for the feet, that use the feet? 2 left feet. You've got 2 left feet. I fall all the time. What else? Foot loose. Foot in mouth. Oh, I do that one all the time. Yeah, there's a lot of them. And feet play a major role in everyone's life. You probably didn't realize it, but our feet individually have 26 bones in each one of them, which is a total of 52 bones, which makes up 1/4 of all the bones in our body. And by the time we're 55 years of age, the average person has walked 55 or 70,000 miles. In other words, about 2 times around the world in the whole. Now, Charles Fillmore, in The Revealing Word, tells us that feet represent the phase of understanding that connects us with the outer or manifest world and reveals the right relationship towards worldly conditions. There are 27 references to feet, the feet of Jesus in the New Testament. We are reminded that people would sit at the feet of Jesus to obtain his wisdom, or they would lay their sick and dying at his feet so that he might heal them. And the night before he was crucified, it was Jesus that washed the feet of his disciples. In biblical times, people either wore sandals or they went barefooted. When they arrived someplace, it was the tradition back then with their dirty feet that either a slave or a servant would wash the feet of their master or their guests. It was part of being hospitable. It is noted in John 13 that Jesus rose from supper and laid aside his robe, and he took a cloth and tied it around his loins. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of his disciples and to wipe them with the cloth which was tied around his loins. When he had washed their feet, he put on his robes and sat down and said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? If I, then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, how much more should you wash one another's feet? For I have given you this an example so that just as I have done to you, you should also do. Truly I say to you, there is no servant who is greater than his master, and no apostle who is greater than he who sent him. We learn two important facts in this reading. Number one, Jesus washed the action of his washing their feet. The first one is above all else, he was willing to serve. He was willing to serve others. And second was that he had already forgiven Judas for betraying him, or for what Judas was to do after the dinner. Um, Even though he had betrayed him, he forgave him, or otherwise he would have never ever washed his feet. After all, washing somebody's feet was also humbling. Regardless of where Jesus walked, he turned the ordinary into the sacred. And part of that happened because of the transformation that transpired wherever he walked and wherever he served. D.L. Moody was conducting a ministers' conference at the Moody Bible Institute. One night, as he was walking outside of all the guest rooms on his way to his room, he noticed that there were several pairs of shoes outside the doors of some of the rooms. And what he knew and understood was that this was a custom from Europe, that someone would put their shoes outside of their room and someone would come along and clean them and polish them for the next day. And he realized that this was their custom, and so he went in search of some of his students. And he found a group, and he went to them and asked them to come back with him to clean the shoes of the guests. And the students balked at what he wanted them to do. After all, why should we go polish somebody's shoes? We're here to study the ministry, not to clean shoes. So Dr. Moody polished the shoes himself. He was willing to serve, and we know from his writings that indeed something happened within him during that process, that moment of humility. Being of service is not an action, but rather an attitude. Being of service is a willingness that comes from the heart. It's ordinary people all around us that raise their hands and say, yes, yes, it's me, I can help, I can do this. They are the ones that step forward to alter a condition for others. It is the everyday person who gives up themselves from their heart, not from a place of pride. These are the individuals who know that transformation happens within them, not just those who are serving. In Galatians 5:13 through 14, we are told, by love, serve one another, for the whole law is fulfilled in one saying, that is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And in that process of serving one another, transformation happens within everyone involved. I often wonder what would happen if Putin would shift his attitude of greed and control to one of serving in love and kindness. What a better world we would have. After washing everyone's feet, Jesus said, "Blessed are you if you do what I do." And just how did he serve others? When he saw a need, he moved to help. He never waited for an invitation to serve others. If someone needed healing, he did it without asking. We can all remember the story of the lame man who laid for years at the Bethesda pool of water, waiting for someone to put him in. Jesus healed him unannounced, and he just did it, and he told the man to get up and walk. There's an old saying in science of mind, treat and move your feet. Well, that same thing goes for service. We cannot serve others if we are not willing to move our feet or go where we are needed. It's a fact that in practicing kindness, we deepen our understanding of how inner and outer change are fundamentally intertwined. And that change is about the transformation that happens within each and every one of us. When we serve, we shift from the me to the we. Often we discover that the most important thing we do is to offer, that have to offer are nothing, not things at all. We uncover the full range of our resources at our disposal. That's our time, our presence, and our patience. We recognize our ability to give comes from a state of mind and from our heart. Often we discover humble opportunities to serve everywhere. This is the beginning of shifting from a me to a we orientation. You start to look at people and situations with an eye for what you can offer them, not vice versa. When we serve, we are expressing gratitude. When you acknowledge the fullness of your life, you can manifest a heart of service in any situation. Service doesn't start when we have something to give. It begins naturally when we have nothing left to take. This is a powerful place to find ourselves in. External change is required for the world to progress. And when we couple that with inner transformation, it can affect the world in a radically different way. Mother Teresa said, "We can do no great thing, only small things with great love." This from a woman who made a difference in the lives of millions all over the world. Her feet truly walked on sacred ground. It's a matter of what we choose to focus on. It's not just what we do that matters. It's the inner impetus behind our actions that really count. To serve is to transform yourself. When we practice small acts of service, even if it's only for holding the door open for someone, says, I can be of service to this person. That kind of changes the deeply embedded habit of self-centeredness. In that brief moment, we experience other-centeredness. It relaxes the pattern of the ego and our self-oriented tendencies that subtly influence our choices. No true act of service, however small, can ever really be wasted. In time, we begin to experience the potential for transformation that is embedded in every single act of generosity that we do. It's a realization that when you give, you actually receive. Over time, all of your small acts lead to a different state of being. It is when we realize that being of service becomes increasingly effortless. Each small act of service is an unending ripple that synergizes with countless others. When we choose to remain in service, we start to see new things. When a group of people performs service as a practice, it allows value to emerge organically. The resulting ripples are unexpected. The ripples continue to seed unpredictable manifestations. More emphasis is placed on people coming together and co-creating that service. And sometimes lots of ripples will remain unseen for years. It doesn't matter, though, because they are unconditional gifts that ultimately show up. Each of us, on a personal level, can make small gifts of service that ultimately create the opening for deeper change. Transformation starts with all of us when we take a step forward to do service. Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond puts it, when you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. When you serve, you see life as whole. So what is transformation, and what happens to someone who is transformed through service? Our lives are about more than just behavioral changes, taking self-improvement classes or going to therapy, even though I don't knock them, and these absolutely contribute to our transformation. Individual transformation is an internal shift that brings us in alignment with our highest potential in life. It is the heart of every major aspect of our lives. It affects how we see and relate to the world and how we understand our place within it. There is no timeline or time limit on inner transformation. It can happen instantaneously or throughout our whole entire life of development. More commonly, though, it happens in both. The path includes a wide range of transformative experiences that support the whole person. Service is one of those experiences. Psychologist Carl Jung talked often about the transformation and the psychology of change within our life. However, the change that Jung described wasn't about our New Year's resolutions or our self-development and self-help books that we read. It was about becoming more aligned with the person that you want to become, which is your authentic self. Human transformation provides a clear path for each of us to live up to our fullest potential. We begin to live our lives with a greater purpose, with greater clarity, and with greater passion. And walking that journey places us on sacred ground. It is the sacredness in the moment a person realizes who they are is a part of the whole divine universe. Service, transformation, and sacredness was certainly all part of being resurrected. I remember thinking before I became a religious scientist that you had to die to be resurrected. After all, Jesus died, and 3 days later, he was resurrected. Through the teachings, however, of science of mind, as well as my mentors, Lloyd Strom, Marcia Sutton, Dr. Carolyn, and many others, I have realized that resurrection transpires many, many times in our lifetime. First, we need to understand resurrection is the activity of eternal life and love. It is knowing it is also the absence of the belief in death. Christian scientists tell us that it is a spiritualization of thought, and it is a material belief that yields to spiritual understanding. The unity faith expresses that resurrection is the restoration of the mind and body to their original undying state. In her book, Mysteries, Nora Brooks states the process of life is that of resurrection, continuous unfoldment. Resurrection is an eternal process. We rise out of limitation on a daily basis. This is living. We rise out of the belief in death or separation into a realization of unity and cooperation. To rise, we must train our thoughts to see the true and the beautiful, God in action, instead of the false and the ugly, men's opinions from the standpoint of duality. And that is what I believe Jesus taught us by example, by his teachings, and through service and love. He showed us how our own resurrection is above recovery, restoration, or about recovery, restoration, and transformation. It's about rising above our fears. After all, death and our fears are one and the same. The only death that transpires is what lies deep within us that prevents us from knowing that we are each one with the great I am. There was a pastor of a small congregation that was experiencing a proselytization by some very energetic missionaries. After listening to them for quite a while, he said to them, I have a proposal for you. And it'll help us settle all that you're sharing. Right here, I have a glass of poison. If you would like to drink this poison and remain alive, I know that you are really true believers, and my entire congregation and I will move to your beliefs and your congregation and church if you drink it and survive. If you choose not to drink the poison, well, then I can only conclude that you are false ministers because you do not trust that your God would not let you perish. Now, this put the two missionaries into a real bind. So they went off to the corner to pray and to discuss it and to figure out what they were going to do. And finally, after a while, the missionaries came back and said, well, we have a plan. And they looked at him and they said, here's what our plan is. You drink the poison and we'll raise you from the dead. As we celebrate the life of Jesus this day, on this beautiful Easter morning, that we're grateful for no rain, know that you do not need to drink the poison to experience resurrection. You experience it each and every day in your oneness with God and through your willingness to serve and by your own transformation. You just have to move your feet. This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours, and so it is. Amen.